All right, welcome to Speak More Fluently. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something, well, absolutely fundamental, really key stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
We're talking about body language and nonverbal communication.
That silent language that's always happening alongside our words.
Mm.
It's easy to overlook, actually.
So easy. And look, this deep dive is built straight from the sources you've shared with us. We're really focusing on how these nonverbal cues are just critical, especially, if you're communicating in English.
Right, so our mission here basically is to unpack the core insights from all this material. We want to show how things like gestures, your posture, even the tone and speed of your voice.
Things beyond just the dictionary definitions.
Exactly, how all that can really boost your clarity, make you feel more confident, and honestly just help you sound more natural when you're speaking English.
And you should definitely stick with us for this, dive, because what we're unpacking today, it isn't just theory, it's like immediately actionable stuff.
Yeah, these insights can make your English communication, well, significantly more powerful. They can help you bridge those moments when you maybe can't find the perfect word.
We've all been there.
Oh, yeah. And it helps build stronger, more authentic connections. Whether you're face-to-face or even online.
Okay, let's really get into this stack of sources then. So, based on what you've given us, let's start with a clear definition. What exactly are we talking about with body language and nonverbal communication here?
Okay, so in essence, it's any communication that happens without words. That means your gestures, facial expressions, posture, eye contact, and even those aspects of your voice, like the tone, the speed, the volume. The sources call these paralinguistic signals.
Paralinguistic, right.
Yeah.
So it's that whole layer of meaning that's happening, like underneath or alongside the actual words.
Exactly. And one of the really striking things of the material is just how much of our face-to-face interaction relies on these signals. It's huge.
And what's fascinating, and this seems like a key takeaway from the sources, is the link between your body language and your words. Ideally, your body should back up what you're saying.
Right. But when they don't match up, like say you're saying, yeah, I totally agree, but your arms are crossed tight, maybe you're frowning. The sources are pretty clear.
Yeah.
People almost always believe the body language over the words.
Blah.
It's like your body is telling the more honest story in that moment.
So your body's the tiebreaker. Okay, that makes understanding this stuff incredibly powerful. Which brings us to the big question. Why is this especially crucial for someone learning English?
Well, think about it. When you're learning a language, you're putting so much mental energy into just getting the grammar right, finding the right words.
Oh, yeah. It's exhausting sometimes.
Totally. So nonverbal cues can step in and do some real heavy lifting, especially where your words might be, falling a bit short.
The sources really emphasize that these signals amplify meaning, like smiling when you greet someone, using open gestures when you explain something, or just varying your tone slightly.
Those cues help your listener get not just the words, but the feeling behind them, the importance.
And this is huge, especially for learners. Nonverbal communication fills in those language gaps.
Oh, definitely. When you're searching for that perfect word, that specific adjective,
Yeah.
sometimes just a simple gesture can get the meaning across instantly. Like trying to describe something massive, just spreading your hands wide can bridge that vocabulary gap right there.
That is incredibly practical, and it also touches on something else the sources mention, building confidence and rapport.
Yes. Standing tall, making good eye contact. These aren't just signals to others. They actually make you feel more grounded, more confident. And they signal to the other person, hey, I'm engaged, I'm approachable. It helps build that connection.
Which is so valuable in real-world situations, especially professional ones, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The sources point out that developing these nonverbal skills can make things like presentations, interviews, even just joining a meeting feel much more natural and, importantly, more persuasive. You're communicating with your whole self, not just, the vocabulary you happen to know at that moment.
Okay, so body language is this essential toolkit. Let's dig into the tools themselves. According to the sources, what's actually in the box?
Well, one key area the sources focus on is facial expressions and eye contact. A genuine smile, for instance. Universally powerful, right? Instantly signals warmth, openness. Makes you seem approachable.
And it's not just the big smiles either. The sources talk about those smaller cues.
Right, the ones that show active listening.
Yeah.
Like a slight raise of the eyebrows, maybe a thoughtful frown, a consistent nod. Those little things tell the speaker you're tracking with them.
Yeah, that you're actually processing what they're saying.
Exactly.
And on eye contact, the sources give a surprisingly specific guideline. aim for looking at the person about 60% of the time.
Yeah, that 60% figure comes up. It seems to be the sweet spot enough to show you're interested and engaged, but not so much that it feels like you're staring them down.
Which can be really uncomfortable. That 60% feels like a really practical number to keep in mind.
It is. And the sources offer a neat little exercise for this too. Practice mirroring emotions you see in videos.
Oh, how does that work?
Just try to copy the facial expressions you see on screen. It sounds simple, but it helps build that self-awareness and control over your own expressions.
I like that. Okay, moving on. What about gestures?
Gestures, yeah. The sources highlight open palms. It's kind of a classic signal of honesty and openness. Subtly suggests you've got nothing to hide.
Okay, makes sense.
And using illustrative movements, using your hands to show size or shape or movement, the sources say this makes your speech way more dynamic, easier for the listener to visualize.
Which is invaluable when you're maybe struggling to find the exact English word.
Precisely. And conversely, the sources warn against what they call closed gestures.
Like crossing your arms.
Exactly. Crossing arms, hands in pockets, hiding your hands. Even if you don't mean it, it can accidentally signal that you're defensive or uncomfortable or just not interested.
Good point. Something to be mindful of. Okay, then there's posture and, like, your overall body position.
The sources link an upright but relaxed posture with confidence.
Relaxed is key there, I guess. Not stiff, like a board.
Definitely not stiff, just standing or sitting tall, shoulders relaxed. It conveys presence.
And leaning in slightly, that signals engagement.
Yeah, a slight lean in when someone else is talking is a simple cue that says, I'm listening, I'm interested. But, and this is crucial, the sources bring in a big cultural note here, respecting personal space.
Yes, the personal bubble. This is huge, isn't it? Because it varies so much.
Dramatically. So the sources recommend a general guideline for many English-speaking cultures, about an arm's length away, maybe 1 to 1.5 meters or 3 to 5 feet.
And getting too close too fast
can make people really uncomfortable in those contexts. Yeah. It's a subtle thing, but it can really impact perception. So sticking to that guideline from the sources is probably a safe bet initially.
Good advice. Okay, let's touch on what the sources called paralinguistic signals, the voice stuff, basically.
The message is carried by your voice besides the actual words. Pitch and tone are key here.
How so?
Well, the sources explain, for example, that a slightly rising tone at the end of a sentence usually signals a question in English.
Okay.
And maintaining a steady, clear volume helps convey confidence. If you mumble and speak too softly, it can make you seem unsure, even if your words are perfectly fine.
Right. And pace is critical too, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Speaking too quickly, which often happens when we're nervous, just makes you hard to follow.
And too slowly.
Might make you seem hesitant or like you don't know the material. The sources stress finding that moderate controlled speed. It's best for clarity, lets people actually understand you.
And here's something from the sources I found really encouraging, especially for learners. Using pauses effectively.
Yes, pauses aren't failures. They don't mean you've forgotten what to say.
Right. They can be strategic.
Totally. You can use a pause to emphasize a key point, give your listener a second to process, or just give yourself a moment to gather your thoughts. It actually shows control, not hesitation.
That's a brilliant way to reframe pauses. Okay, now, we live in an increasingly virtual world. Video calls are everywhere. How does this body language stuff translate online? The sources mention digital body language.
Yeah, the principles are similar, but the execution definitely changes. Number one tip from the sources for virtual eye contact. Look at your camera lens, not just at the person's face on your screen.
So it feels like you're looking at them directly.
Exactly. It creates that sense of direct eye contact for the other person.
And basic things like lighting and background, they matter too.
They really do, according to the sources. Good lighting, a clear, non-distracting background, it all contributes to professionalism and keeps the focus where it should be, on you and your message.
Makes sense. And even though it's often just like your shoulders up, posture and gestures still count.
They do. The sources recommend positioning your camera so people can see enough of your upper body. Let those gestures still be part of your communication.
Okay.
And sometimes, with laggy internet.
That's the worst.
Right. Sometimes you need those digital signals, a clear nod on camera, maybe a thumbs up emoji in the chat, or a quick typed "got it" can show engagement when the audio is being difficult.
Good tips for the Zoom era. Okay, so we've got the toolkit. Let's circle back to that really crucial point about cultural differences. The sources really stress this, right?
They're very clear on this. Body language is not universal. Rules, interpretations, they vary massively across cultures. Being aware of this is just essential to avoid, well, accidental misunderstandings or offense.
So personal space again. The 1.5 meter guideline is a baseline for many English-speaking contexts.
Right, but the sources acknowledge that someone from a culture where standing closer is the norm might find that distance a bit cold or unfriendly.
And vice versa, someone used to more space might feel crowded.
Exactly. So that guideline from the sources is a good starting point, a kind of middle ground, especially in new English-speaking environments.
What about eye contact differences?
That's another big one. As we said, direct eye contact is often seen positively in many Western cultures. Honesty, confidence.
They're not everywhere.
Not everywhere, no. The sources point out that in some other cultures, prolonged eye contact, especially maybe with elders or superiors, can be seen as disrespectful, even challenging.
So finding that middle ground again is key. Not staring, but not completely avoiding gaze.
That seems to be the practical advice, yeah. Comfortable, but not intense.
And gestures seem like the most potentially dangerous area.
They can be. The sources give some pretty stark warnings. Common gestures like a thumbs up or the OK sign, they can be totally positive in one place and seriously offensive in another.
Yikes.
So the advice from the sources is crystal clear. Unless you are absolutely sure what a specific gesture means in that specific cultural context.
Stick to neutral ones.
Stick to neutral descriptive gestures or just, maybe hold back on gesturing much until you're more familiar with the norms. Better safe than sorry.
Okay, this is all incredibly important stuff, but it also sounds like a lot to consciously manage while you're also trying to speak English.
It can feel like that at first, for sure.
So how do you go from just knowing this to actually doing it naturally? The sources had some practical exercises and tips, right?
It did, yeah. Really helpful stuff. They suggest starting small. Maybe just record yourself speaking English for a minute.
Like on your phone?
Yeah, exactly. Read a paragraph, explain something simple, then watch it back. Paying attention specifically to your body language, face, hands, posture, even your voice tone and speed.
Okay, see what you actually look and sound like.
Right. Then try recording it again, but this time, focus on adjusting maybe just one or two things you noticed. That self-observation is really powerful.
What else?
Role-playing with a friend or a study partner, that's another technique the sources mention.
How would that work?
You practice a conversation or a specific scenario, like ordering coffee or asking for directions. Ask your partner to give you feedback specifically on your nonverbals. Then try it again, trying to incorporate that feedback.
Getting external feedback. Smart.
There's also shadowing native speakers from videos, trying to mimic their gestures, expressions, and tone in real time as you watch. It helps internalize those natural patterns.
Kind of like learning a dance.
Sort of, yeah. And mirroring your study partner subtly, maybe matching their posture or a general expression, can apparently help build rapport faster, make the interaction feel smoother.
Then for the digital world.
The sources suggest, kind of amusingly, digital selfie sessions. Basically, making short video clips on your phone to practice looking at the camera, checking your framing, making sure your hands are visible if you gesture.
Okay, practical ways to practice. But what about applying it in the moment, next time you actually speak English? Any tips from the sources there?
Yeah, a few good ones. First, set an intention. Before a conversation or a meeting, just pick one nonverbal skill to focus on.
Just one.
Just one. Maybe it's just remembering to smile genuinely when you greet someone, or keeping your posture open, or using your hands more deliberately. Don't try to overhaul everything at once. You'll just get overwhelmed.
That makes sense. Baby steps.
Exactly. Another tip is a simple warm-up. Before you start speaking, just take a second. Stand tall if you can, relax your shoulders, maybe put a small, genuine smile on your face. It can physically prepare you and help project a bit of confidence right from the start.
Nice. Like getting ready before going on stage.
Kind of. And during the conversation, try to maintain a gentle awareness of your nonverbals. Don't obsess over it, because you still need to focus on listening and speaking, but just try to keep it in the back of your mind. It gets easier with practice.
And afterwards.
A brief reflection. The sources suggest just taking a moment. How did your nonverbal communication feel? Did it seem to match your words? What felt natural? What might you tweak next time?
Continuous improvement. Okay, the sources also helpfully listed some common mistakes people make, especially maybe when learning English and feeling a bit self-conscious, and how to fix them.
Yeah, really useful list. One common one is over-gesturing. Hands flying everywhere. Big distracting movements.
Seen that. Maybe done that.
We probably all have. The fix the sources offer is practice. Focus on controlled, purposeful gestures. Gestures that actually add meaning, not just random energy.
Okay. What else?
Stiff posture. We talked about standing tall, but being rigid like a rodot isn't good either.
Right. What's unnatural?
Totally.
Yeah.
The sources suggest consciously relaxing your shoulders, maybe doing a quick stretch beforehand, and just allowing yourself some natural movement.
Good tip. What about eye contact mistakes?
Constant eye contact, that intense stare we mentioned. Remember the 60% guideline? Staring can make people really uncomfortable.
So the fix is?
Practice shifting your gaze naturally. Look away briefly when you're thinking, or maybe shift between the person's eyes and their general facial area. Just don't lock on.
Got it. And speaking too fast. Very common when nervous.
Super common. The sources just emphasize consciously slowing down. Take breaths. Focus on clarity over speed. They note that clear speech builds way more trust and understanding.
Makes sense. And one last one for video calls.
Yes, the dreaded low camera angle. Looking up someone's nostrils.
Not a good look.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
The sources are explicit. Position your camera at eye level and make sure you're framed well, maybe mid-torso up so people can see your face clearly, and maybe some gestures too.
Okay, those fixes seem manageable. And seeing them applied helps. The sources had some real-life examples.
They did, like a job interview. The advice was, sit upright, maintain warm eye contact, use open hand gestures, signals honesty, remember, and speak clearly, moderate pace.
Makes a good impression. What about a group chat?
In a group conversation. Nodding to show you're listening to others, maybe leaning forward slightly when someone makes a point you connect with, using small cues like raising your eyebrows slightly, just before you speak to signal you want to jump in.
Helps manage the flow. And a presentation.
For a presentation, the sources suggest things like purposeful movement, maybe stepping forward to emphasize a point, using wider open gestures directed towards the audience, using pauses effectively for impact, and smiling to build rapport.
Makes it more engaging. And a video chat.
Pretty much what we discussed. Head-centered, neutral background if possible, using your hands visibly. The sources note that seeing gestures, even on screen, helps listeners feel more connected.
Okay, so pulling all of this together from the sources we've dug into today, this deep dive really confirms it, doesn't it? Body language, nonverbal communication, it's not just some optional extra. It's like a fundamental, powerful part of how we communicate in English.
Absolutely. It complements your words, helps you connect on a much deeper level, and really ensures your message actually lands the way you intend it to.
And for you listening, if you're learning English, paying attention to this stuff, practicing these nonverbal cues, it can make a truly significant difference.
Yeah, it's about feeling more confident, definitely appearing more confident, sounding more natural.
And just making sure people understand your meaning, even if your vocabulary is still, growing.
Exactly. And like any skill, the sources really imply that it just gets easier and more natural with practice. Consistent effort helps these things become almost automatic.
So your English communication, like your whole communication, can really shine. So here's something to think about as you consider everything we've unpacked today from these sources. If such a huge amount of communication happens without words, maybe true fluency in English isn't just about knowing all the grammar rules and memorizing vocabulary lists.
Interesting point.
Maybe it's also about mastering how you say things, using your whole body to support your message, shifting communication from just like translating in your head
to a more authentic human connection.
Exactly. So the question for you is, what single nonverbal cue will you focus on practicing first?
Something to definitely think about.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive on Speak More Fluently.
Until next time.